Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on the third Honeywell Fire Safety webinar series. The topic for today's session is Smart Addressable Fire Alarm System Morley UL. Today, we will learn more features of the Morley UL Addressable Fire Alarm System to meet your challenges. At the end of the session, you will be able to apply the latest technology within the fire safety industry to make work easy. This session is being recorded. You can type in your question in the Q&A box under the presentation screen, and the speaker will answer them at the end of the session. Today we have Arpan Bhattacharya, the ASEAN Offering Manager for Fire Safety, hosting the session from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Arpan has more than 10 years of experience in fire and safety industries. He has worked within sales and marketing across the Asia Pacific region for Honeywell over the last 10 years. Arpan was handpicked and trained on NFPA 72 2016 by NFPA author Dr. Warren Olson himself. He has published a white paper on fire and gas safety on offshore gas platform and won the Best Speaker Award by International Society of Automation in the same year. Arpan has conducted more than 100 workshops on electrical and fire safety with local and international regulation bodies, fire alarm system consultant, fire contractor, and local system integrators. With this, I offer to you, Arpan. Good luck.
Thanks, Eileen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third session of Fire webinar. We are connecting after almost a week. So our last webinar was on configuration of fire alarm panel through mobile devices. And this would be the third session where we will be talking about the Morley UL system. So during our last webinar, we presented you how easily one can configure and program fire panel through a mobile app called Smart Config app at the comfort of your home or even office or anywhere you are. And later you upload the files through Bluetooth connection on the main panel at site. However, this facility or programming option through mobile device currently is possible only through Honeywell Morley Fire Alarm Panel, which is the topic for today. Very recently, in fact, this January, we launched Morley panel with UL listing, very specific to small to medium business and residential occupancies. So let me take you through our findings. We will discuss today about the top 3 findings, the most important aspect of fire alarm system, in fact, through this finding, as we hear from our system integrator community towards the expectation of a fire alarm system when you install into such small to medium sizes of business. As you can see in the photograph, we have apartment buildings, we have hospitals that can be roughly around 100 to 100 bedded. We can have hotels that can have around 100 to 150 keys, or even a very large retail stores. And sometimes it can be even a established mall in a city area, which can be in a tier 2, tier 3 city altogether. So what are the most important aspect our system integrator looks at? Now, being in ASEAN with all the major 6 countries as we see, we find that majority of the countries looks for adaptation to UL standard. UL has been always a widely accepted international standards and is a mark of reliability. So this plays a very, very important role when we offer fire alarm system as a secured life safety system in buildings today. The second, but the most important aspect, we would say that it has to be very simple. People should be able to easily install it, configure it, and maintain it. When we talk about installation, there should not be too many part codes as we see with many other systems. It should be simple, easy to use, and a plug and play system. That's what we are finding more and more as the demand coming from the system integrator community. As we mentioned during our last webinar, configuration at the ease from your home, all these kinds of comfort points plays a very, very important role, how you configure it. Do you see that the panel is giving you enough features to self-learn rather than you depend upon a skilled learning from the OEMs or a very skilled technician who has to come to your site at their cost and they help you with. So making it much more simple plays a very, very important role. And last but not the least, efficiency. Today, as we see that urbanization is growing at a much faster pace in tier 2, tier 3 city, we are getting a lot of demand of having installed bases started in those kind of cities. And what happens typically is because most of the system integrator are having a lot of credential staying in the main city, they tend to look at a logistic, an important aspect remains a logistic arrangement in sending people to tier 2, tier 3 city. So until and unless we make your team, we make your installation much efficient to use, it's very difficult for you to arrange logistic properly and make sure that efficiently you install, commission and come out of the job and go for the next job. So the system need to be very, very efficient. It should be able to help you and make your team more productive. So these three elements plays a very, very important role today in the SMB projects, small to medium projects. So what we will do before we jump today into the main subject, which is Morley UL, let me take you through a journey of a typical mid-rise apartment project, how today we can help you understand how to design that project, and then help you also understand that if you have a system like Morley, how easy it becomes for you to install, commission, and configure the system. So we today take the apartment building. So what we are saying is we have taken an apartment building, which is typically, for an instance, around 15 floor. So all the 15 floor that we have taken, typically it will have the apartments inside, and each of the floor or the 4 floor plate area will be around roughly around 1200 square meter. So you can imagine if you have around 4 apartments in each of the floor, then each apartments might be a 2-bedroom flat or a 4-bedroom flat. So typically we are talking about a 60 apartment building. And we look at ground floor, which will have a reception, gym, control room, and other services, and basements. So we are taking, for instance, for the design calculation, 2 basements here. So we will have a large basement with maybe a clear height of around 5 to 6 meter for majorly for the parking purpose. And as you know, when we take you through the journey of design, the floor plate area, as you go down to the building towards the service areas, ground floor, basement, reception, their floor plate tends to be 25 to 30% bigger than the serviceable floors, which are the 15 floor we are talking about, where you will have your apartments. So if serviceable floors are around 1200 square meter area, maybe ground floor basement, we are considering around 1600 to 1800 square meter areas. And as you can see in the photograph here, there will be 2 risers, which will put in 2 exits across the various floors, running down from the top floor to the bottom floor. Now, being an apartment building, what are the areas or the application areas you see here? Kitchen remains an important area. Why? Because every of the apartment will have to have a kitchen. So you have a kitchen, you have a bedroom, living rooms, you will have parking. In the basements, as we discussed, lift lobby, corridors will be definitely in every of the floor that you see here. Exit stairways would be there from where a person can escape in case the service of the lift are stopped due to fire. And then you have other serviceable areas, for instance, fire pump room, HVAC room, as we discussed during our first webinar. And if this apartment tend to be quite large, connected to other apartments or condominiums, generally we have seen you will have a security room with surveillance systems inside it for them to monitor 24/7. So these are some of the aspects that you see inside an apartment. Now, let's quickly look at the design aspect. So if we take some of the international design aspects, it's very simple. Detection coverage, generally, if your room heights are around 3 to 4 meter, you consider roughly around 40 square meter. Definitely, you need to look at beams, you need to look at columns. So we are not considering right now for the sake of design purpose, but definitely depending upon beams and columns, things will change a bit more. So detection coverage around 40 square meter, manual call station need to be placed near the exits. and typically its spacing happens to be between 45 to 60 meter. And everywhere where you are placing manual call points, you definitely need to place the audiovisual devices like horn strobes. So what we find out that typically for a hypothesis of this design, we see you would be requiring around 30 detectors per floor. And then we will also see how we design the parking, reception areas, and the ground floor areas, right? So as we discuss you and we take you through the journey of the design, each of the kitchen as per international standard has to have a heat detector. Until and unless you are using a listed smoke detector to be applied in kitchen, you can use a heat detector. So 60 apartments, as I mentioned, will have 60 heat detectors. Now, depending upon the number of types of apartments, which can be 2-bedroom, which can be 3-bedroom, and the total number of detectors that you see in the lobby area, roughly it comes to around 240 detectors. The smoke detectors will be important to be installed near the lobby area, which is the lift lobby, because that's the recommendation again from the international standards. And in the parking area, although a lot of places we see heat detectors are being installed, but we would still suggest to use a multi-criteria detector, especially if it is a closed parking area. Why? Because you may have a lot of time false alarm scenario. So multi-criteria is good to have there. And sometime if you only put heat, it may take a lot of time for the heat detector to detect a real smoke. So preferably we would like to keep a multi-criteria detector. And as I said, the basement parking is almost 2 levels or 3 levels, and generally they have a higher height compared to the serviceable floor. So their height typically remains 6 meter to 6.5 meter tall at times, or between 4 to 6 meter, as a result of which the density of detector tends to be more there in such areas. And then you cannot neglect the exit areas, which is definitely again an important area where people will escape in case of real fire or emergency. So you have multi-criteria detectors involved there as well. And as we take you through the journey of detection design, it's important that each of these exits should have a manual call points in order to have a manual intervention by people if the system doesn't work at time. So you may have a manual call points that can be triggered to alarm the building people. And every places where you install a manual call points, you need to have an audiovisual devices. Now, when we come to the ground floor, as we said, in the ground floor, there are multiple service areas like pump rooms, you can have an HVAC rooms, you can have a diesel generator room if it is a bigger apartment, and you will also have a control room areas. So depending upon different types of serviceable areas, what are the fire load you may be able to anticipate in such areas, you will have different types of detectors like duct detectors, heat detectors. So we have considered some of those. And then in general, the ground floor tends to be a little bigger in terms of the floor plate area. And so we have more detectors in the ground floor areas as well. So typically, if we look at it, we have around roughly 500 to 550 detectors and call points, as you see here. So this is roughly what we are trying to give you a significance of when we say a mid-sized project, how it looks like typically in this part of the world. Now, when you have this kind of a mid-sized project and you look at how you make the life of the integrator comfortable and easy, we look at a couple of aspects as we mentioned in the first slide. So first, let me take you to a very important aspect, which was easy to install. How easy to install should be your system, and what are we launching today that makes your life more easy? So if you look at our current Morley system, it's kind of a plug and play system. If you look at the construction of the system, you can see here, it's one single frame that combines the front door and the back box or the back door, and a small skeleton frame which is installed there that would house in the chassis, and a small gap below to house in the battery section. So it's a one single unit that comes. You don't have to mingle with different types of part codes to assemble and construct the system, which can take a lot of your time. Followed with it, you can see now we have just added a chassis on top of it. Now the chassis that we talk about, which looks very sleek and black here, is also having a user interface. When we say user interface, it's basically what we are offering here is a touch type of an user interface, just like an ATM kiosk. You will be able to do all your operation through the touch screen panel that you see here. So it's having a user interface, it's having some button that offers you a preset functioning of sound resilience, acknowledgement, and various other functions that are typically followed through in such kind of a panel, right? So you can see the main frame is very simple. It's the main frame and having a chassis. That's all you need to do to assemble a panel at these kind of sites. Followed with it, if you look here, we have a basic installation holes in which you just need to screw your chassis into this hole or the main frame into this hole, and we have knockout units that will allow you to pass on the wire and cables as comfortable that can be. Now, if we look at the details in terms of the chassis will have terminals which is situated on the top. This is following through the knockout. So you can see there are multiple terminals, and these terminals can be utilized for interface of the loop cards, as an interface for your annunciators, as an interface for your USB plug cables, and maybe even the printer port. So there are different types of interface that we offer you with. So all these terminals are associated with those kind of interface. And as you know, and as you can see on the top right corner, the knockout holes are on the top of the main panel. These interfaces will definitely need the cable wire run that need to merge out of these knockout holes. So it makes it very easy and palatable to look at, how these two systems can work with each other very easily when you're doing the installations. Similarly, when you are mounting the chassis on the mainframe, you just need 4 screws to mount the chassis on the mainframe. And all this comes as part of our installation kit, mind you. Last but not the least, this is something which may look very simple, but plays a very, very essential role. That is the door of the main panel. Why? Because many a times we have seen with many different types of systems, this door opening may not be very easy. Sometimes it is 90 degree, 70 degree to 90 degree openable. Sometimes it is top openable, and it may not make it very comfortable for the installer to install standing there, or operator to operate standing there very easily. As a result of which, if you have a 180 degree swivelable door, not only one operator, if there are 2 people, a supervisor and an operator can even accommodate themselves and work on it if required. So this gives them quite a length to operate upon quite comfortably. So you can see here, this is one of the most important aspects where we have trimmed down the amount of operation that a person need to do at a very complex system versus a very easy to use simple system.
Arpan?
This is something we discussed.
Arpan, sorry to interrupt you. There is something, background noise in your microphone. If you can check, it is we can constantly hear the background from your microphone.
Is it okay now?
I think now is okay. Let's continue.
Hey, thanks, Eileen, for this heads up. Okay, so let's continue with that. So we talked about installation, how simple it is and easy to install. Last time, I'm sure some of you friends were already there during our last webinar, which was hosted on 2nd April. We talked in detail about how to configure your system through mobile app. So we just want to give you a brush up that how easy to configure we have made this system now available for you. So traditionally, if you look at configuring a system, traditionally we are using keypad in some of the panels, and sometimes we are using a laptop to configure files. So you create a database files on your laptop and you upload such database files onto your main panel. We introduced a third methodology with the launch of Morley UL panel, and which is to do with configuring the entire database file into your mobile system, mobile handset, with the help of an app which is called Smart Config, freely downloadable from the Android iOS store, from the Android store right now. And you can configure and create your database file on this kind of a mobile handset and just upload it through the help of a Bluetooth connectivity onto your main panel. That's the ease of configuration we have introduced as a second way of working into this kind of a panel. So just to give a summary update, you can create the database file onto your main mobile phone through the help of the Smart Config app. You can entirely create, starting from identifying a panel, to creating detectors and devices, to configuring a detector devices as a smoke detector or a heat detector or an MCP as part of devices. You can configure all of this through the help of a drop-down menu, and you can save the entire program as a PDF file ready to be transferred to any other colleagues or friends into their mobile phones. So what we are doing is we have made this pretty easy to adopt through a mobile phone in terms of creating and making the file into your phone. And finally, once you are at site or when the panel arrives at site, you can easily upload such file through Bluetooth enablement. So we have made sure that your panel and the main mobile device are able to pair up through a Bluetooth signaling, and you are able to create that batch file, and you can upload that batch file easily through the help of Bluetooth connectivity onto your main panel. Whether you want to upload the file or you want to download the file, all can be done at once. So that's the easiness, or that's the approach we have kept towards configuration and programming of such system. So what we talked about, easy to install, easy to operate, and easy to configure and program. And finally, last but not the least, easy to maintain. This plays a very, very critical role in a lot of time we have seen, especially in less complex, small, medium-sized projects. Why? Because many a times due to a lot of external issues, we find sometimes some diodes had burned out, the screen has cracked, and you have to do a lot of replacement. So individually, our system integrator friend takes a lot of pain to understand what is that specific part code. Is it a CPU which is burnt? Is it a very specific electronic solid state device like a diode which has got funked out? Or is it some kind of a screen which has got cracked that need to be replaced? So it takes a lot of time, a lot of transactional time involved between the system integrator, the distributor, and the OEM. As a result of which, for the end user, imagine the amount of downtime they take to get the replaced part properly replaced on time. And it never happens on time. It takes a lot of time. So what we have done here is to make the thing simple. We have now come up with a chassis replacement. So what we are offering you here is a one single unit chassis that will house in the brain and the nervous system of the entire unit. That is the CPU, the solid state device electronics, which used for communication purpose. Everything is built into this chassis. So all you need to do is replace this chassis with a fresh one. And every point of time, as a company, we will make sure that our distributors in places in the cities are having adequate spare stock to help you replace this on time and when needed, right? So this is how we are able to provide you, establish you, easy to maintain, easy to install, easy to operate, and easy to configure such systems. So let me recap on the values before I get into the portfolio. When you have such things in a typical project size, which is demanding you to have 500, 600 detectors, what is very, very important? You may have more of these projects coming as part of your credibility in the market. So how fast you can manage this project and how well you can have your team manage this and how faster you can go for more projects plays a very important role. So when we make your life more simpler by using such ecology, I am sure you will be able to adopt more customer base. This kind of a system definitely reduces your time to configure and make you more productive. You really don't have to worry about having a very highly skilled, trained technician to do such jobs. It is highly intuitive. It is self-learning, as we mentioned in detail in the last webinar, that the ecosystem that we have presented inside the mobile configured app is so fluid that it can help you to understand one step after another by an easy drop-down menu. You really don't need to wait and watch when the technical skilled labor should come from the OEM business point. Offsite management, this is a talk of town today because a lot of you are today serving from the main city to a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities. So how do you effectively manage your logistic plays a very, very important role. And finally, when we make your life simple and easy to operate, you know you will have a piece of time to get more projects built up for your more business generations in time to come. Now with this, I would like to give you an update about the entire portfolio. So what we are introducing here with, as we said during the first slide, we are introducing here with a Morley system that has an UL approval. So we are coming up with the UL latest listing, which is 10th edition, 868 10th edition of the UL panel. As you can see here, it's pretty slick and easy to be used a kind of a panel. And as you know, when you have this kind of projects, which is simple to a mid-size range, it's quite common that these kind of panels not only will be utilized in the control room, but might be also utilized in the areas like reception areas and many other places where general public might be seeing this as one of the important element. And aesthetic plays a very, very important role here. So we have made it touchscreen. We have made it look elegant through the coloring of gray and red tones. And you can see here, we are introducing two different types of panel, a basic version and a little bit higher version than the basic. So the basic version can offer you 98 field devices, expandable up to almost 400 field devices. And the next type is having 200 field devices, expandable to almost up to 800 field devices. Now, when I'm saying field devices, we are typically talking about detectors and also modules put together. We have annunciator panels that can be LCD or LED repeaters. We have dedicated NAC circuit. Notification appliance circuit plays a very important role when we have an UL listed fire alarm panel, because there are certain listing that talks about having a dedicated source of current that should flow from the main unit to the audio-visual devices. So NAC circuit is being utilized here. We have enhanced our events. Most of, if you understand, prior to this panel, we also have Morley EN panel, which is having 1000 event log. We have expanded the event logs from 5000 events in the basic panel to 10,000 history events in the other side, in the other version of the panel. And last but not the least, I would like to take your time here that we have made this panel a cyber compliant. Why cyber compliant? Because as you know, we are adopting this panel with a different types of an ecosystem, which is data. As you understand that we are configuring now the panel through mobile phone, of course, a public data comes in play as a very, very crucial aspect here. So when we look at adopting ourselves with respect to such platforms, it is important that the public data is well protected. So we have made sure and aligned that such panels should come with a proper cyber compliance so that there is no data encroachment that takes place or data insecurity that happens when you do such kind of file sharing and transfer. And finally, all the range we have introduced here. We have detectors offering from the range starting from multi-criteria to smoke types, to beam types, to fixed heat, thermal, and various types of detectors that you can see in most of the portfolio of Honeywell. We have introduced everything here. We have all types of modules, control, relay, isolator, monitor modules, and zone modules. We have also introduced annunciators of two types, as we discussed, repeaters, as well as mimic panels. And last but not the least, our flagship brand, System Sensor, has a huge portfolio of audio-visual device starting from chimes, horn, strobes, low-frequency sounders, speakers. So all these will be able to get compatible with this kind of a system. So that's it for today. Considering the time we have in hand, I would like to add now that we have invested a lot into all the major 6 countries, as you see here, through a complete infrastructure of team. This would be our team here, as you see here, would be our first point of contact, as they are the sales leader in the respective region for this business. Having said that, we will also be able to help you to connect with our technical team and our service team in all of these individual regions for all your queries to be addressed. Thanks for your patience and thanks for listening. Over to Eileen.